Morning, everybody. This is Steve Lentini, and I'm your host for the podcast Different Thinking for Different Times. And my guest today is Paul Scolio, but we're going to reverse it a little bit. Paul is actually going to interview me about something that he knows about my life. It couldn't be called a career, but it certainly was different thinking, and it led to many experiences that over time certainly influenced my thinking, especially I would say discernment or sagacity, as I like to say, because I just learned that word sometime earlier this year.
Yes,
uh,
I'll have to look that one up.
I didn't Well, it means discernment, Paul. So Paul Scolio is my guest, and he wanted to do this interview because he's heard me tell a few stories, and I think today he's actually going to learn how it all started and learn a little bit more about it and what it led to. So,
Yes.
where do you want me to begin?
So I will just say I'm Steve's friend from, I don't know, 2000, so maybe 25 years, something like that. And
A dear friend for me. He's helped me in so many ways, and I'm
and
really
it's been
grateful.
mutual. It's been a mutual kind of learning and helpfulness, mutual beneficial relationship. So Steve has had many experiences, fascinating experiences, career paths that he's an entrepreneur, and as an entrepreneur, Steve, you were in the film industry in some way, and that's what we're going to talk about.
All right. I'm going to tell you how it all started. I had a good friend, and from time to time I do reach out to him, but I had a good friend many years ago that I met while I was selling toilet paper and everything you throw away, business to business. I was calling on businesses, selling them everything you can imagine. And it included hospitals and healthcare and all kinds of things. Anyway, so I met this young man who had an idea about
You want to know his name?
Marty. We'll just say Marty. And I'm not sure I'll mention all the names of some of the people, as you know, that I met. Um, Maybe first names, maybe the name of the company, and things like that. So, all true events, which even some of them continue to amaze me to this day. So,
Ah,
he had an idea for a movie, and he wanted to call it Prisoners of Rock and Roll. And he introduced me to a guy from that he knew that had done a movie with him, or that he had appeared in the movie. And so, what can I do? They said, well, maybe you could raise some money for us. So I said, send me the idea and the script, and what your ideas are about who would appear, and that actually turned into
okay.
Marty had the idea because wrestling was hot at the time, and he wanted to do a movie about these two guys promised the girls they could get them into rock and roll fame and former wrestlers.
And
So
can you say
anyway,
their names?
yeah, those guys I can say their names. So we didn't know who was going to appear yet, and neither did the guys. They just Marty just had the script and the producer and the filmer, the director. Right, this guy was going to direct it, and I guess I was the producer in the movies. Producers raise the money and are responsible for it. So anyway, they sent me the script. I thought it could be funny or fun. And then we started talking about who could appear. And Marty was more familiar with wrestling. And he said, hey, how about Captain Lou Albano? And at the time, Captain Lou he had won the tag team championship with Tony Altamare, who lived in Connecticut. They were tag team world champions. And Lou Albano was famous on his own. Tony Altamare never did much else other than the wrestling fame. And so we reached out to Captain Lou's um, manager, who was Cyndi Lauper. So we reached out to Lou, and Lou was a guy that had paper clips in his. He had things pierced through his cheeks, paper clips, and rings and rubber bands on his goatee. And so anyway, we reach out to Cyndi, and Lou says yes, he'll do it for $5,000 for an afternoon. And he said, "Can you? I want to have my partner Lou Altamare with me, and he explained that they were the tag team champions, and we said yes. And I think Tony got $1,500 for the afternoon. So we agree to film it in a day, and we filmed a lot of scenes in a hotel room because it was just inexpensive to. It was probably one of those flop-in motels, right? The door's right there. You open it and fall into the room.
Right.
And so, and then we rented a gym in Hamden, Connecticut, and we staged a wrestling scene. And so it was fun to do. And I did raise about $50,000 altogether for the movie.
Where'd you
And
get the money from?
my attorney invested a bunch, and then I put in some, and a few other guys just put in, $3, $4, $5,000 here and there, and it added up over time.
Because you're a salesman.
What I would say to people is, if you're going to invest in a project like this, picture it flushing down the toilet. I said, picture it like this in the swirl that goes down the drain, because the chances are it's not going to.
But it's the film industry, and you got Lou Albano has a name, and
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. And he wanted us to donate some of the profits to multiple sclerosis at the time. That was his charity.
What year was this?
Oh, wow. My kids were young, so it was in the mid 80s. Because my twins were born in 80, and my son was born 11 months later in 81. So the kids were young. So anyway, we start, and then I see the finished product, and I realize it was a high school play on film. What we did, we raised another $3,000 or $5,000 to advertise it in coal towns and in like New London, Connecticut, places where advertising people in the TV arena told us commercials would run the best places to run: Virginia, West Virginia. So we ran it in places. We did make some sales. No one ever got their money back. But that's how we met Tony Altamare. And Tony wanted to know, hey, I want to introduce you to a guy named Ron Gorton if you have any other ideas. He's done a lot of movies. And he did Panic Button in the 60s, in which it was the last movie that Jane Mansfield appeared in before her accident. Marie Chevalier appeared in it. And
Tony introduces you to who?
Ron Gorton.
To Ron Gorton. Now, had Ron Gorton at this time made the film yet?
He made Panic Button in the 60s.
Okay.
And because he made that, we did Google that there was a movie, Panic Button, but we never just tried to find a copy of the movie, because that, as we'll all learn later, that was critical. That was really key. And it turned out to be that was Ron's life. So long story short, we meet, and we don't have an idea yet. But Ron said whatever we come up with, he could produce it. He could get it done. He just wanted me to raise the money.
So you were considered a good fundraiser.
I was considered a fundraiser. However, Ron was really an extraordinary fundraiser, which we'll talk about in just a bit. So I forget whose idea it was. It might have been Marty's, but anyway, collectively, the idea came to do the movie called Autopsy. And it was to film everything that happens to the human body after death in all different circumstances. A crime, how an autopsy is conducted, Jane and John Doe's, and even an embalming. And so we were introduced to Joe DeMona, who wrote the books.
What books?
He wrote the books Coroner and Coroner at Large, with Dr. Noguchi, who was considered the coroner to the stars in the 60s.
So this is Coroner
and Coroner at Large. and was a fascinating guy because he also had his own novels.
And who was this that wrote this?
Joe DeMona. And he was also, for 3 years, I believe, the head writer for General Hospital. And
Okay.
he was the guys, for people that are familiar with General Hospital, he was the guy that um, figured out how to introduce Elizabeth Taylor as the Ice Queen. Because the writers at that time were stumped over how do you freeze? How do you make ice in the middle of the summer? How do you make her the Ice Queen? And so Joe figured out that it would be a scientific experiment gone awry, and from cloud seeding or something like that. And so he figured it out, and he was only consulting at the time. They ended up asking him, would he take over the show and be the head writer? So he was also a fascinating guy, had written some novels, and a couple of them were bestsellers.
Okay.
Anyway, he knew Dr. Noguchi, who was the coroner to the stars. He said, I got the guy, Dr. Noguchi. He had done not Frank Sinatra's, I'm sorry, not Frank Sinatra's Autopsy. He did another star's, Frank Sinatra's best buddy, who died, as it turned out, from a drunken fall. And that enraged Frank Sinatra. And I forget the guy's name. He was a famous actor at the time. I wish I had pulled up his name. He was a famous actor at the time, and Dr. Noguchi held a press conference and talked about the actual cause of death, that he was too drunk to pick up the phone and call for an ambulance. And since it was in a news conference, Sinatra went absolutely ballistic on all the politicians out there, and they did suspend Dr. Noguchi from practicing as the medical examiner. He was still doing autopsies. He was no longer the head medical examiner in Los Angeles. But he had also done Robert F. Kennedy's autopsy, and he came up with a theory that there was someone else that was involved, because during his questioning of people, he found out that police had never questioned the guy who ran through the kitchen after Sirhan had shot Robert Kennedy Jr., yelling, "We've got him, we got him."
Mm-hmm.
Right immediately as the shots were fired. So anyway, his theory was someone else.
William Holden.
William Holden, thank you. Yeah,
Who-
William Holden was just so drunk that he couldn't call the ambulance. He couldn't call for an ambulance. So anyway, Dr. Noguchi was renowned, and we thought, okay, he'd be a great guy to do this movie with and help be a script advisor. So we enrolled him, thanks to Joe DeMona, and we would meet with Joe. He lived at 70 Sutton Place in New York City, and we would meet with Joe at PJ Clark's every Tuesday night. After my day job was selling all kinds of business supplies, and the home office at that time was in Bridgeport. I would just drive down Tuesday night from Bridgeport to PJ Clark's in the city, and we would meet to plan what was happening. And so Joe was an interesting.
At this meeting, it was Joe DeMona and Dr. Noguchi?
Dr. Noguchi was always over the phone.
Okay.
But Joe DeMona and the investors. So I invited some of the potential investors to come down with me and meet Joe. And Joe had written a number of novels, and a couple of them were scientific based. He had wild themes in them, which is why the General Hospital reached out to him. So anyway, we meet Dr. Noguchi over the phone. We're talking to Joe. I bring the investors down, and after the third or fourth meeting, Joe reaches. I'm sitting next to Joe, and he says to me, "Steve, I have someone coming in to meet you. It's Tina Louise." I said, "Tina Louise, why is she coming here?" "Oh, she wanted to meet you." I said, "Joe, does she want to raise money too for something?" "Yes."
Now, who was Tina Louise?
Tina Louise starred in Gilligan's Island.
Oh.
She was Ginger in Gilligan's Island.
So did you meet her?
So anyway, she comes sashaying into one of the meetings, and the first thing she says is, "Oh, I need somebody to pay my cab. I didn't bring any money." And one of my investors popped up, probably hoping he'd end up spending some time with Tina. He popped up and said, "I got it. I'll go pay it." He shot out there like crazy as fast to go pay the cab. Anyway, she doesn't pay any attention to the investors. And she was very, very polite, very one. I mean, she didn't do anything suggestive, but because she was so beautiful and she was in Gilligan's Island, guys were the men at the table were googling her or ogling her. What's the word, right?
Yeah.
So she said to me, "I'd like to talk to you about raising money." I said, "Well, first, Tina, we have to wait. First, let's do this meeting, and I'll be glad to talk to you."
She's 91 now.
She's 91 now. She was 50 something at the time. So we can figure out the year. I think she was 50.
Okay, so it would have been 41 years ago.
That's in the 80s.
Yeah, 84.
84. Yeah. Okay. So after the meeting, some of the investors decided to jump into the autopsy project. And a couple of them said to me, "Steve, you have to, let's find out what Tina wants." I said, "Well, I'm going to after we're done." So I sit with Tina, and two of the investors remain. And she's telling us about a project that she did called Miloha, a movie called Miloha. And she couldn't finish it. And she owed the current editor $46,000. And she figured it was going to take another $50,000 beyond that. So she wanted $100,000. Pay off the guy that had it captured. And she envisioned it as a on-screen movie. And she said to me, "I don't have I guess they would call it the outline of the script. There was a name for it in the movie business at the time."
Yeah.
She said, "I don't have it. I do have it at my apartment. If you'd like to come back, I'll give it to you if you'd like to come back with me." And she said, "Before we go, I have to go to the bathroom." She goes to the bathroom, and some of the investors made a very crude joke. "Tell her you're this far away from investing." And I said, no, guys, I'm just going to go get the treatment. It was called. I'll get her treatment. And she had a demo tape. She lived in Sutton Place that's how she knew Joe DeMona. She lived in Sutton Place, just a floor or two above Joe or below Joe. But anyway, she lived in the same building. I take her there. She said, "Would you like to come in?" I said, "Sure," in the building. And when she got to her apartment, she said to me, would you like to come in and have a drink or something?" I said, "No, thank you. I'll wait here." I waited outside in the hallway.
Did she like you?
Huh?
Did she like you?
She said to me something at the door. She said, "I want to tell you something." So she hands me the treatment and the video, and she said, "I want to tell you something." She said, "When I called your home," she said, "I just couldn't picture you being married to such a cold-hearted woman." And that was my first wife, and I love her dearly. She's the mother of my children. So she had a sense of something, and of course, I did get divorced shortly there afterwards. Anyway, yeah.
So she had some seductive intention with you?
I don't think so. I mean, most guys would probably say, "Oh yeah, right. Tina Louise wanted me."
But it sounded like she wanted $100,000 to finish her project.
She wondered if I could help her raise $100,000, and
so she came to this investors meeting not to invest, but to find someone to fundraise.
Joe DeMona was telling her all about us and raising money and having money to start a project and pay Joe. We paid Joe. We paid Dr. Noguchi for his advice. And so he just having gossip discussion with her, and she must have said, "Hey, would you
So how much did Joe get just for talking to you?
I think Joe got $10,000.
And
But it's you know, a little fuzzy, the details now.
yeah, and how much did the Dr. Noguchi get for talking?
I think he got 5. So Tina Louise, actually, I did tell her, listen, I'll talk to people. Sure enough, a month and a half later, I did have people that said, yeah, we would give her the $100,000, but they had conditions. And so I called her and I said, Tina, I've got commitments from people. However, they have conditions. And she was so sweet. She said to me, why don't you just come down? Tell me the next time you're going to be in New York City and we'll have dinner together. And I said, yes. So one of the next times coming down to meet with Joe and the crew at PJ Clark's, I met her afterwards. In fact, we were strolling through the neighborhoods in Hedgewood Turning because she was dressed to impress, and I said, Tina, people are recognizing me, and she got quite a chuckle.
Very good, Steve. You're always sharp.
So anyway, I told her the news is there's conditions on the 100,000, and if I were you, I wouldn't do it. And she said, "What's that?" I said, "Well, they want to market it as see Tina Louise nude." There were a few naked scenes. It was grainy, but you could also clearly see her topless, and she wanted it to be on the big screen. And I said they're only going to do video. That's all they're going to do. They're not even going to ask people to put it in the movies. They're not going to present it for you. And so the decision's yours. And she said, no, I agree with you. I'm not going to do it. And I don't think it ever got made. And somebody in Beverly, in fact, I gave my demo tape to somebody. It was not very well done. It was grainy. But the concept of her script was very good. So without going into the details of the concept of the script, if you look up Miloha, you might find some details on it. It was like visitation from someone who had died in her life, and the whole stream of synchronicities that occurred. And so anyway, I thought it was really interesting. It would have needed much more than $100,000 to do it right. And these guys telling her the truth allowed her to make the decision not to do it, because they were just going to make a mess out of it, you know. So anyway, I'm still now talking with Joe DeMona and Ron Gorton, who says, after about 3 months, I want you to change the name of the movie from Autopsy, A Walk with Death. I said, why is that? He said, Autopsy is just not going to make it. And unbeknownst to me, he had gone to the medical examiner in New York, Dr. Bodden, Michael Bodden, I believe his name was, and he had sold him the concept as well. And he sold him the rights Autopsy, and Autopsy was made in 6 episodes on HBO. Now, we still didn't know this was occurring, so I had the copyright for Autopsy, and I was suspicious. And I also got the copyright on A Walk with Death. I had them both. I didn't end the copyright on Autopsy.
And who did he sell that to?
HBO and Dr. Michael Bodden, the New York City medical examiner at the time.
And so did Michael know you had the rights to it?
No one knew about anyone, which was very key.
Find out?
Eventually, yeah. Oh, I did, because I kept tabs on Autopsy, the word Autopsy, and as a show, and kept Googling it from time to time. Might have been Internet Explorer at the time, but anyway, at some point, about a year and a half or 2 years into the project, maybe it was a year, I discovered Autopsy was being created by HBO and Dr. Michael Bodden. Okay, so
did you get anything from them because you had the rights to it?
No, I did reach out to them and said, "Hey, I have the copyright," and they were like, "Too bad." And we didn't have any investors to go even pursue it. Okay. And Ron may have been the person really to sue, because he was the one that went out and sold it, and who knows what he got. Right? He definitely got some money. He sold the idea and the concept after learning it getting the idea from us. So anyway, we go flash forward. We're going to film the first scene, and it was scheduled in Newark, and it was a car accident, and we were filming pulling a car out of the river and taking a body out, and then that body was being followed to the morgue and through its autopsy. And at the day of filming, this is where Ron wasn't so bright. I meet, and we thought we owned 100%. I was the only one from the investors that were there at the time. And we meet a guy that owned a sanitation company, a guy that owned a trucking company, and a guy that owned Italian restaurants all around the country. They were at the time, I think I could say the name of the restaurant. I think they were public. They ended up going out of business. They had locations in Washington, D.C., Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts. Fuzzis, Sfuzzis, Fuzzis restaurants. There was one in Houston, I believe. On the West Coast, there was another one, whether it's Seattle or something like that. But anyway,
And who
they
was
had
that?
restaurants. Huh?
What was that guy's name?
Donnie.
Donnie what?
Donnie Colombo.
Really?
Yeah.
It's
Donnie
11 o'clock.
Thank you.
And it was Eddie Salvato Trucking, and Chester Pasillo Sanitation.
Eddie Salvato
Yeah.
Trucking?
Salvato Trucking.
And what was the other one?
Chester Pasillo, he owned Pasillo Sanitation in Newark.
Okay.
Who later on, many years later, did some consulting in some of the Sopranos. I saw Pasillo Sanitation in the credits of the Sopranos. And they were all good guys as far as I knew, but we're in the lunch line and meeting each other for the first time just by saying, hey, I'm Steve Lentini. Who are you? And anyway, they asked me, what are you doing here? I own 100% of the movie. And then Chester and Eddie, I believe, were partners. And they said, well, we own 100% of the movie. And then they recognized Donnie and said, what are you doing here? And he said, I own 100% of the movie. So
and you also owned 100% of the movie?
It was impossible. But
but I mean, that was your impression?
Yeah.
So 4 people owned 100% of the movie.
It turned out to be more. There were 6 or 8, and some were never named, but we do have other names.
And Ron was there?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he wasn't flustered at all that everybody was talking?
No, because he figured he could tell the story. Hey, guys, I needed more money. Sorry, I didn't tell you. Well, yada, yada, yada. Let's negotiate. But I'm just surmising that. It ended up being mediated by a judge who was unnamed. I did end up with a transcript from the mediation, but the judge was never named. He was a former judge, and often judges will serve as mediators. And no one was named but me and Neil Esposito. He owned Macaulay Trucking in Hartford, Connecticut. Neil Esposito.
Neil.
There's a bridge named after him because he died in a car crash on the bridge in Wethersfield. And he was a great guy. He gave me the money.
So he also owned 100,000?
No, he gave me 25,000 of the money that we gave Ron. We gave Ron 50,000.
Well, he was one of your investors.
He was one of my investors. Yeah. Actually, we gave Ron about 75,000 because I put some money in too. And so anyway, in the mediation, we had to drive to Newark. And that's where I had never driven with Neil, and Neil was a little lead foot. He was driving 80, 90, 100. And we get to Pasillo Sanitation, and we have to drive through a brick alleyway. And literally, he had this big Cadillac. There was 6 inches of space between the both sides of the car and this brick alleyway. It was like an arch. And I was kidding Neil. I said, Neil, I think we're probably going to get X'd out here. It felt very scary. And then the yard opened up into a recycling yard where they were separating trash into all different kind of piles. And Chester Pasillo was a great guy. And we sat around the table with Donnie wasn't there. Donnie Colombo wasn't there, but Eddie Salvato was there. And Neil Esposito, myself, and Chester.
What about Donnie?
No, he wasn't there.
Okay.
I forget if he had a representative, but anyway, we ended up getting 2%. That's what we got.
So this is where the mediation was?
Yeah, after we met everybody. Yeah, we mediated at Pasillo Sanitation. So we got 2%. And the movie did get finished. I actually did see the final product. I don't have the DVD anymore. But it never got distributed because the investors, not that they included us in their negotiations, but they couldn't really agree to who was going to handle it. And about 6 months later, I got a phone call. At that time, I had moved to Massachusetts to run an office for that company that I worked for. They had purchased my distribution business, and I worked for them for 16 years. And in 1992, they asked me to move up. So it had been in the can 5-6 years at that point. And they called me and said, Chester Pasillo called me and said, Steve, we can't figure out who to trust. We want to put in more money to advertise this film, and we decided we could trust you. And I just said, Chester, I can't do it. I got a full-time job and I have children. I got too much going on. It's not something I'm interested in at this time. And then I never heard back from anybody, and the movie died. And it was finally called A Walk with Death. And it had a scene with sadly a homicide victim who, when you in the autopsy room, when you see the body on the table, it looks absolutely perfect. And then when they zoom in, you see a little hole right here in the head of the murder victim. It was a murder victim. And there's many scenes with funeral directors, medical directors. Medical director appeared, was somewhere in Florida. I forget his name. I think he was from Miami, or anyway, one of the larger cities in Florida. He agreed to do it, and he walked people through crime scenes. He was the one that walked us through that poor victim that had, just like I said, a little hole right here.
So was this just one film, or was it multiple episodes?
It was one film, filmed in many different areas around the country.
Okay, so somebody had to like put it all together and edit it.
Yeah, Ron did. He did a good job coordinating all that. He did get it done. I thought it would have been a fast. When I saw it, I thought it would work on cable. It definitely would have worked. The investors just could not agree on who to trust with running the whole deal if money started coming in.
Really?
So, yeah, yeah.
And
so
is that
anyway,
the film industry was so slippery and shady?
No, the investors probably.
Oh, because they didn't want to show the income.
I don't know. But they wanted me to manage it. And I
Yeah.
didn't ask too many questions. I just said no, it wasn't something I wanted to do. And so after the meeting in Newark where the mediator was, I got a phone call from a guy who was chairman of Long Island Lighting at the time. And he invited me to Long Island Lighting in the boardroom. And I had heard his name, so I surmised he was probably an investor. And he said that embarrassingly he had given Ron $1.7 million for 3 movies, and that Ron had made 2. And the one he made was a crime movie filmed in Bridgeport. I saw it. I went to the screening of it. It was horrible. It was really bad. And the second one, this guy, part of his money went into Autopsy, or A Walk with Death. So he turned out he was an investor as well, one of the unnamed ones at the mediation, because he was chairman of a very high visibility company at the time.
What was this guy's name?
I think I'll leave that out. I think
Is it an Italian last name?
No. It's
Oh,
Greek.
So he scammed Italians and others. For a while I was
Yeah.
just thinking he was only scamming Italians.
No. And
Okay.
he was chairman of Long Island Lighting.
And you don't want to mention his name for what reason?
Let's see. Let me see if I can. he was embarrassed. He did it without a contract. He just gave Ron that kind of money because he was hoping he would get his son into film.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember he wanted to get his son into film. Does he get his son into film?
You know, I mean, maybe he was in Ron's Bridgeport crime film that he made, but it was horrible. That film never went anywhere. And so the movie just died. And then we also found out later that there was a car dealer in somewhere down south, I don't know, South Carolina, Georgia, that was paying Ron $1,500 a month for a long time and was a partner in some of the movies. I don't know if he shared in any of the revenue that Ron got from investors. And someone else, there was someone else, and so there were a number of investors, and of course that's the reason to be careful with film investment and to picture it just gone the minute you write the check. So if you don't have that kind of money, don't invest in movies. And you really don't, right? And
Well,
then
Ron made money just by getting investors to invest. Now, do you think Ron was like bipolar and was just very high energy and able to talk his way through things, but
I think somewhere deep down he had good intentions, but he never separated the money properly and never had a and investors didn't ask him, right? We should have asked him, what's your budget? How are you going to spend it? What do you get out of this? Do you take it up front? All of those questions needed to be asked, because after we gave him our 50,000, the first 50, before we gave him another 25, that weekend he invited us down to his house he was renting in Stamford. And that should have been a clue because he didn't say he was renting it. And he had a brand new Donzi on the river. He was right on the river in Stamford. He had a brand new Donzi, a speedboat.
Yeah. Okay. So
probably with our money.
Do you think Ron was grandiose?
Yeah, he was narcissistic and grandiose. He probably had good intentions in his mind, right? The BS stories that he told himself was it's all going to work out.
So those are two features of bipolar manic depression: is grandiosity and an ability to like run through money really quickly.
Yeah, yeah. He ran through a lot of money, millions over the years.
But he made some films.
He did make some films. And Panic Button, the thing is, if we had been diligent enough to rent a copy or find a copy at that time when we were doing it, it was probably still possible. Bet you that some of the blockbusters had it because it was in the mid 80s, early up until I would say 89, 88, 89. We were still process of finally getting it finished.
Can I ask a question? So it sounds like Ron might have had some. Did he drink?
Yeah. He could. Yeah, he'd have his days. I didn't see him that much. Surmise mostly he was in control when we met him. He was convinced of his grandiosity. And Panic Button, had we rented the movie, it was about a guy who was scamming people making movies. It was really the first version of the play Producers, and then the movie The Producers. that was about people scamming people. So Ron probably was the first person that wrote that kind of theme in a into a movie. And this was his life. That was the fascinating thing. He was scamming people. Now, was there odds? Were there odds that the movie could become successful and make a return? Yeah, I don't know if Panic Button ever made a return, but because of the people in the cast, Mike Connors, who became Mannix later on, got his first part in that movie. Mike Connors, and I'd love to see if I could see the movie.
Okay,
Um,
so Panic Button came before the producers.
it was definitely it was in the 60s.
Okay,
Panic Button.
how old was Ron when you met him?
Let me see. When was Panic Button made? Um, let's see. Panic Button, the movie. Panic Button, the Jane Mansfield movie. 1964. It was called a comedy. It was an hour and 30 minutes. Filmed in the summer of 1962 in Italy and
Mm.
released nearly 2 years later. And it's the film tells the story of how a washed-up actor, Chevalier, and a buckshorn unknown, Jane Mansfield, are chosen to star in a television production of Romeo and Juliet. The picture is known for being one of several foreign films Mansfield was forced to make after her contract was dropped from 20th Century Fox in 1962. So she did it for money.
Mm. She did it for money.
Yeah.
Of course.
Can't blame
Isn't that
her.
why people do things?
Yeah,
I
that's
mean, make
right.
film
We work.
actors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She needed a way to make money. And then Joe DeMona, who we met, who is a fascinating guy. Joe DeMona wrote Corner at Large, The Ends of Power, where he partnered with H.R. Haldeman, who was part of Watergate. Last Man at Arlington was a novel about this assassination. It was surmised that he was covering the conspiracy theories in that novel about
Yeah.
the JFK um,
Right.
assassination. The Coroner series was later on combined, called The Most Controversial Medical Examiner Tells All. Joe wrote the Benedict Arnold Connection. He wrote the book with George Wolfe about Frank Costello, the Prime Minister of the Underworld. Then he wrote To the Eagle's Nest, which was a fascinating movie about World War II and the search for Hitler's getting to the Eagle's Nest. And we bought the rights to that also from Joe to make a movie with it, and it never became a movie.
So who's we?
Investors, a group of people bought the rights from Joe.
So you had a group of investors that like went invested with all of these with you?
Yeah, yeah. So we had the
And
rights to the Eagle's Nest. It's a fascinating novel. It's never been made into a movie. It could, but Joe also wrote a show on Broadway called This Was Burlesque, and a book called This Was Burlesque by Ann Corio and Joe DeMona. Ann Corio was a burlesque performer, and then
okay,
he
so
wrote great
Joe,
court-martial cases. He wrote 70 Sutton Place, which was about the building he lived in. So he was a fascinating guy with lots of stories.
okay, so let's go back to the connection between Joe and Ron.
Joe talked to Ron once, basically, and Joe didn't like Ron. So,
Okay.
and then he was cut out when it was changed to A Walk with Death. Ron just took it all over, and
Yeah.
we let him.
Yeah. So Joe did Joe lose money with Ron?
No,
He
no,
made
because
money.
we had paid him. We had paid him, and we paid him for a specific period of time, and then he was never owed any more money. But because of that, meeting Joe, we were talking about all the work he did. And he said, I never sold the rights. How Joe talked, I never sold the rights to the Eagle's Nest if you guys were interested. And so we said, well, how much are you looking for? And he said, well, you can have the rights for a year for $10,000. And so we bought the rights to it and tried to find someone to,
Oh, just for a year. So you
yeah.
don't still have the rights.
No.
Okay.
No.
And
Joe passed away many years ago now. And Joe also had fascinating stories about General Hospital. And he told one that I'll share here. He said that Marilyn Monroe was fascinating in when she appeared in General Hospital. And a year after she left the show, her time was up. Someone in the prop room came up with a paper bag, and she said, "Joe, I don't think this is costume jewelry." In the bag was $500,000 of jewelry that Elizabeth Taylor, not Marilyn Monroe, Elizabeth Taylor left behind. Just forgot all about it. And when it was delivered to
was
her,
Elizabeth Taylor that was in the
yes, I'm sorry, it was
hospital?
Elizabeth Taylor that was in General Hospital. She was the Ice Queen. And a year after her time was finished, her contract was up, and that part of the theme was over in General Hospital because they froze a tiny port in Long Island, on Long Island.
Okay, so what's in the bag? Who found the bag?
One of the cast people, one of the props people, found a paper bag in the prop room, and she said, "I don't think this is costume jewelry." And it turned out to be Elizabeth Taylor, $500,000 of Elizabeth Taylor's jewelry. And when it was delivered to her, she said, "Oh yeah, I was wondering where that was." $500,000. I mean, everything has a perspective, right? For her, it wasn't such a big deal. And who knows who bought it for her? Maybe it wasn't her money, right, that paid for that jewelry.
Right.
Who knows? But Joe had a lot of fascinating stories about the people in General Hospital, and we did pay him to write the book Behind the Scenes of General Hospital, Confessions of the Confessions of the Head Writer, something like that was and that book is out there somewhere. And we reached out to ABC and General Hospital to see if they would actually advertise it and cooperate with us if we did some advertising with it, and they were not interested. But Joe's non-disclosure had long expired, and it was it was well done and a good story, and it was a tiny little book. It was about 60 pages, but it had some fascinating stories about people who got their starts there. I forget, a couple of male actors got their starts there, and at that time they were now very visible and stars. And of course, everybody liked the story about Elizabeth Taylor.
So just go back to the crew of men that were owning 100% of the production.
I surmise Ron got over $2 million collectively himself. You know what he raised? He raised $2 million from Chester and Eddie Salvato and Donnie Colombo, and he raised $1.7 million at the time, and he raised untold others from when we found out there were other people that were paying him either monthly or had paid him large sums. So Ron probably kept a few $1 million and lived on it, is what he was doing.
Yeah, and how do you think he got connected with these people? It sounds like they had lots of money to invest. And
I don't know, because I never knew what he was doing behind the scenes. It could be Tony Altomari knew all these people, the guy who was the tag team champion with Ron, with Lou Albano. Could be Tony, but I never knew because I didn't discover there were all these people and all these other investors until it was all over.
And did the investors know each other?
Some of them did. Yeah, we had dinner one night at Fuzi's because the restaurant location was in the city, and Donnie Colombo generously, very generous, paid for all our dinner, and we had discussions about the project and the movie. And this was after we all met each other, so there was some humor to it.
So here's a group of guys that lost a ton of money, them more than you. and they're yucking it up to some degree.
Well, I don't think they all thought they were losing money, but they all, that it was all going to get burned, because when we had dinner at Fuzi's, it was Ron Gorton, Donnie Colombo, myself, and one other guy, I forget who. So not everybody was there, but I think the idea was that the possibility for the movie was still going to be great, right?
People didn't think they were being scammed yet.
No. Well, they knew there were multiple investors, but somehow people were getting over that figure, and mediation was going to solve it, and everybody still had a piece of money based on what they put in. They still had a piece of the investment later on. But when I met with Donnie, I think it was Ron introducing me to what was to come, because his wife. When I went to meet Ron in Stamford to go down to New York City, I drove down to New York City. It was actually Ron's son. It was Ron's son, Ron, Donnie Colombo, and myself at Fuzi's restaurant. We didn't know the whole story at that time. And his wife, while I was waiting, said something to Ron in a very low tone that I could hear. I think she was making sure I could hear it. She said, "Ron, make sure you tell Steve. Make sure you tell Steve." I think that she was feeling bad and wanted her to tell me the real story. And that might have been that, because that was the time that we were in the middle of changing the copyright, because he told me to abandon Autopsy, which I did not.
Right.
Not that it mattered. And he told me to get a copyright on A Walk with Death, which I did. But, it was all wasted.
So his wife liked you, wanted you to know that things weren't going the way you thought it was.
I think she felt guilty. I don't know about liking me. And she was always very nice. I mean, she was the homemaker. That was it. That was her role. She made tea, coffee, and dinner.
You're extremely likable. People connect with you. It's part of your gift. People meet you, they like you. You engage, you see people. There
was a lot I missed in seeing people.
Well, they feel seen.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily reveal their vulnerability, but
yeah. I accepted back then people for what they said they were.
Yeah.
And there was not even an inkling in my mind of I should push back and be, I didn't have any skepticism whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was somewhat, in my mind, enamored by the potential of return. I can see where it's kind of like the gold miner.
Yeah.
They get a little gold dust and now they're hooked.
Right. Right. That's reasonable.
Yeah. It's human. I do see the Gold Rush shows when they come on Discovery Channel.
Oh, yeah.
And you see people that have said, "I've got my life savings into this. Please save my mind. Please help me." They have no idea what they're doing, and they invest their whole life savings on the idea that they'll get some gold return. So
and there's that film.
Pretty much it is very similar to filmmaking. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
It reminds, when you're talking about gold, it reminds me of the film, the Bogart film, Treasure of Sierra Madre.
Yeah. Yeah.
Badges.
Yeah.
We don't need no badges. We ain't got no badges. I don't need to show you no stinking badges. That's the only thing I remember.
I got to write that down to remind myself to see it again, because it's been years.
People go crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
agreed.
And you know what, though? I never would have met the fascinating people, Joe DeMona, Dr. Noguchi, Tina Louise, right? To have a dinner with her. And beyond that, before the dinner is to go to her apartment and have my investors are going, yeah, you got to take care of this, right? It's worth $100,000. And I'm like, no, that's not me. Right. And then her inviting me to come in and say, you want a drink? You want a glass of champagne, a glass of wine? And I said, no, I'll wait here. I think she might have been, she was kind of surprised by that, right? Because it was Tina Louise in her mind,
Right.
look at me. You'll want to come in and sit down and see my place. I had no interest in it whatsoever, and that's why my first response was just came right out authentically. No, I'll wait here. And she brought me the envelope and the with the treatment and the video, and
Yeah.
she had a good heart. She's
Yeah.
still alive, I believe.
Right. I just looked her up.
Yeah,
91 years old.
91. Yeah, she's a wonderful person, and
Yeah.
her intentions were good, right? She wanted someone because she really wanted this story to get out. It would have needed another $1 million or 2 million or 3 million to get totally remade, because whoever
Yeah.
she paid to film it and edit it, they did a horrible job. But the film, and there were many scenes in there that relayed her story very well. It would have been a good. It probably would have made it to the big screen had she had the money to do it right, and her
Mm.
intentions were good. As Joe Damona's intentions were good, Dr. Noguchi's intentions were good. I would have met all these people. Neil Esposito, whose family owned Macaulay's Trash, they moved from the Bronx because of the stigma of Italian people owning trash companies, and they called it Macaulay Trash in Hartford. And they were salt of the earth people. You don't ask questions about well, what happened in the Bronx. Neil Esposito was a wonderful guy with a beautiful family, and always all these guys treated me with respect, including Chester Pasillo, Mr. Eddie Salvato, Donnie Colombo. They all were good people in my experience, right? I never had any questions.
Yeah.
And some funny scenes came up in the mediation. One of the guys around the table said, "So, Chester, why didn't we whack this guy?" And the mediator, of course, was a former judge. And at the table, they were referring to Ron Gorton. And it took 15 minutes for Chester to look up and look at the guy and said he was too visible.
So now who said, why don't we whack this guy?
Somebody at the table, one of the investors.
So they are
In
accustomed
the
to whacking.
mediation.
What's that?
I think it was just, the generalization, right? It was a stereotype. And so in that meeting, following the stereotype, I think the guy thought it was funny. Why don't we whack this guy?
Okay.
And
But
Chester answered it like 10 minutes later. Honest to God, it was a long time. Might have been 15, but he eventually looked up during this whole mediation process, which took about a half a day. He looked at the person who asked him that question and said he was too visible. And I knew that was the answer to the previous question.
so there were connections to
Yeah,
that world.
I guess. Chester later told us a story. His secretary came upstairs, said, "You guys want to eat? It's getting lunchtime." And Chester peeled off a lot of money from a large roll of money and slapped her on the ass and said, "Yeah, get us grinders, get us a whole variety." And she got, chicken parm, meatball, all kinds of stuff, and salad, and she was a bubble gum chewing, gum snapping, very stereotypical of what you'd see in the movies. And and Chester started to tell us a story. At that time, recycling green bar was big. And he told the story of one day, one of his drivers called and said that the dumpster for recycling green bar computer paper, when they went to one of the high story, 70, 80-story buildings in New York City, it was empty. He said, "What do you mean it's empty? There's nothing in it, Chester." He said, "Okay, I want you to go. What time you go there?" He said, "I go there every day at 7:30. Okay, so that was one of the tip-offs. The guy had a routine, doing his job.
Yeah.
Chester said, "I want you to get there early for the next week." And they came up with a time. I don't know if it was 5 a.m. or 4 a.m., but the guy got there early. Sure enough, a truck comes, takes the Salvato dumpster, the Pasillo dumpster, and drops another one that has Pasillo on it so that nobody would suspect, right? They had made another dumpster. They steal the paper, and then Chester calls the police. Eventually, I don't know whether it was a week or two later, in the story, he says they arrest the guy. He said it goes 3 or 4 weeks, they're doing it again. He said because That's it. They got basically a slap on the hand, or they just had that guy goes to jail and a new guy starts to do it. And he said, so after, we called the police and we tried it the right way, all he said was, we took care of it ourselves. And that's all he said. But it was funny listening to the story, right? Knowing the stereotypes. And I had Neil Esposito with me, and we had we had a laugh about it. And so Neil was happy because originally we were interviewing Elliot Gould to be the narrator of the movie, of the walk with the autopsy. And Elliot Gould loved the concept, and he wanted $400,000 to narrate it. Well, I mean, at that time our budget was uh, 50, 60, $70,000, right? We were looking for more all along the way. And like I said, eventually I think it was 75,000. Well, Elliot Gould wasn't going to work, but Neil's father always wanted to meet Elliot Gould. They invited him to their Hartford Whalers hockey team box that they had, and Elliot Gould came. And so his father got to meet Elliot Gould. Neil got to meet Elliot Gould. And Elliot had promised to keep them in touch with other investment opportunities and things like that. So I don't know what transpired from that, because a few years later, Neil passed away in that crash on a Wethersfield Bridge overpass. The car was out of control. He lost control of the car. But I can tell you, they were all, to me, very good people. Was I nervous at some of those meetings? Yes.
So his car wasn't tampered with or anything?
No, there'd be no reason in that for
Okay.
for Neil. And it was long after the mediation, and the
right.
movie never came out.
All right.
Because they couldn't figure out who was going to be trustworthy enough to divide the money correctly, right? So it's still sitting somewhere.
What's sitting somewhere?
The finished movie. Somebody owns it.
Finished movie, right.
Probably Chester passed away, and
yeah.
But they were all Brooklyn and Bronx and Newark type guys. And like I said, they never treated me in any negative way. They were all respectful of me and treated me very well. And I never had any reason to believe that they were nefarious people. I think that a lot of it had to do with the stereotypes.
Yeah.
Because they were in rough businesses, trucking. And Eddie Salvato's company was doing construction type trucking. So all the sites that they're on, I mean, it's not office work, right? It's rough work.
Yeah.
So, and sanitation, as demonstrated by people stealing his recycling, and those that at that time Greenbar was they were picking them up for free because they got cash for the paper. They didn't charge to pick up the container.
Paper recycling, Greenbar.
Yeah, it was big at that time. So. Anyway,
clean paper.
Yeah. So I met some wonderful people and have a lot to reminisce about.
Wow. Did we leave anything out, Steve?
I don't think so. That wrestling scene in the movie Prisoners of Rock and Roll was absolutely fascinating. That was the best scene in the movie. Tony Altamara couldn't remember any of his lines, so in the hotel room we had the script on a coffee table, and all he was doing was looking down on it and reading it. But God bless him, right? He was a wrestler and a good one. He had a lot of fun. He was, right, Captain Lou Albano's team tag team partner.
And that was in which film?
Prisoners of Rock and Roll.
Prisoners of Rock. And did that ever get released?
Yeah, it did, in video. In video. People could order the video. I don't know where it is anymore.
Prisoners of Rock and Roll, love it.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Eventually we ran out of money and couldn't even, we made small donations to multiple sclerosis, but because it wasn't generating any revenue, we couldn't even, a few people ordered copies of the movie near the end, and they never got them because there was no more money to make extra copies. I mean, it was just, again, not good. And when you saw the movie, it was awful.
Oh.
But I thought it could have been campy. It just advertise it as awful was my recommendation to the investors. Let's just say it's awful. You still get to see Captain Lou.
Right. Right.
And we had invited Cyndi Lauper. Lou was going to say, well, let's have Cyndi Lauper appear. And I forget what she wanted, but I'm glad we said no,
Mm,
that we didn't have the money. It
yeah.
would have been embarrassing.
Well, you tell us, I mean, give a little context to this conversation is that we meet monthly with a group of guys, and over the course of time, elements of this story have come up, and but it's not the purpose of the meeting.
Right,
So here we have a full meeting, an hour or so almost,
right.
of running through this interesting aspect of your life. You meet some fascinating people.
Yes, I did. Just fascinating people. And all were wonderful to me. So I have no complaints.
Yeah.
Even Ron. I know that Ron was a narcissist and had some grandiose ideas. What if one of those projects had hit? He would have been looked on totally differently by the investors and everybody that knew him. And I'm grateful I met him because I would have met some of the people that I met. And I forgave him almost immediately. I had a chuckle about it. In fact, that's what led me to just say to myself when my brain, my acorn brain, flashes back some very embarrassing or humiliating or dumb errors of judgment, I just say, well, you know what? It seemed like a good idea at the time. I remind my brain that it did seem like a good idea at the time. And I laugh at
Yeah.
myself.
Now,
I hope
would you,
everybody's able to laugh at themselves for these kind of things that we all do as humans.
right, right. Would you say that Ron was charismatic?
Very. Because he dropped names, right? He knew Marie Chevalier, he knew Jane Mansfield, he knew Mike Connors, he knew many other people in the film world. I don't know what they thought of Ron, but he knew a lot of people in that world.
But the name dropping isn't what's charismatic. There's something about him that must have been charismatic.
Yes. Well, he lived large, right? He bought that Dunzy, the speedboat. Now, like I said, it was a few days, maybe a week after we gave him our money, and we had somebody did wonder on the ride back from Stamford, was that our boat?
Yeah,
And he
yeah.
made out that home on the river in Stamford was his, and it wasn't. We found out later he was renting it.
He could have been renting the boat too.
He could have been. You're right. You're right. For a fun weekend or a fun week, or yeah,
Huh.
right. Yeah. He lived large. He did a lot of things. Like he filmed that movie in Italy and raised the money to do it, Panic Button. So
Mhm. He liked Italians. Italians would go along with him.
he did. He did.
Yeah, interesting. Huh. So he's charismatic, grandiose, and it's almost like he didn't really care about money. He just needed it to do things.
He wanted to keep active doing things. Yeah.
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 Would you say he was greedy?
I don't think so. I think he really thought he was going to hit the big one, right? Kind
Yeah.
of like the gold miner or
Right.
anybody that's doing movie and film projects because we don't hear all the stories of the ones that didn't make it.
It sounds like he liked the glamour of filmmaking
Yes.
and,
And all the moving parts because he'd be directing people to do things and hiring the film crews. And he put all that together.
yeah.
His son helped him.
Is his son in that business now?
I don't know. His son is a good guy. I think his intentions were always good as well,
Yeah.
um, because maybe he was thinking the same things, right? That they'd hit it big. One of these projects was going to do it.
Yeah.
It's how the brain rationalizes all these behaviors.
Yeah. Yeah. Charisma is powerful. Charismatic people are powerful.
Yeah, I mean, when you think through history, the charismatic people that have even done the most horrendous things.
Yeah. Yeah.
No
Uh,
one has to drink the Kool-Aid now that we're bringing this to a close. And like I said, Chester was a wonderful, really great guy. He
yeah.
was charismatic too because he was over. He was probably 6'4", 6'5", and a large human being, strong
Yeah.
human being, right? So you can see, and he was the boss in a tough industry, and he was the boss. Man, he walked around that place, and people had a lot of respect for him. They were,
Cool.
like I said, all wonderful to me.
Yeah.
There's no investment required, thankfully, in this endeavor. 6 years I've been doing this, and the revenue I think is $27.56
Yeah.
all totaled. And
Really.
so, yeah, and I think $10 of it was mine to get the investment fund started to prime the pump, so to speak. I think it when I had the idea for subscribers, and I think that was like the second year or something.
Yeah. Thank you for telling the story.
You're welcome. Thank you for having interest.
Yes. Well,
I'll send you the final edit and before I do anything else with it, just so you can fast forward through it to see if there's anything that further needs editing.
okay.
All
All
right,
right. Sounds great.
all right.
Take care.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you,
I'm
Steve.
grateful. You're welcome.
I'm grateful here as well.
I'm grateful.